Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Coming up on episode 381 of Wheel Bearings, we got the Chevy Equinox EV, the Rivian R1S, the Buick Enclave Sport Touring, Operation Frodo, Jean Jennings dies, the free Fiat 500Es, Ram is pulling ahead the Ramcharger and delaying the battery electric Ram. The Durango Hemi lives on into 2025. Hyundai Motor Group is going to Android Automotive. Honda Prelude is definitely arriving in the U.S. in 2025. Nissan Murano and Armada first drives from Nicole. And Robbie's giant Nintendo controller. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 381 of Wheel Bearings, and for the final time, I am Sam Abul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
What? Tell everyone why it's the final time. They're going to think you're leaving the podcast.
No, I'm not
changing his name.
I can't leave the podcast.
Now, Tony Stark.
No, I'm leaving Guidehouse at the end of the month, and so I will be going somewhere else, and we'll talk about that probably maybe next week or definitely the week after. We'll share out more details later, but this will be the last time it says Guidehouse.
Oh, last time it's Guidehouse. Okay.
Sam Dietz.
Yeah. And let's see. Keep going. What's next? I'm Nicole Wakeland from Carnival.
Wait, what's next? What's going on? Who's this?
Who am I?
And I am Roberto Baldwin, who will now be taking over Sam at Guidehouse. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Roberto Baldwin from SAE International, and I'll still be there for a while. I like it there. They're nice to me.
All right. Nicole, what have you been driving? You haven't been around for a while.
I know. I've been driving, and I have this car for 3 weeks for the holidays. That's all I got.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I'm like, normally it's 2 weeks, but I think it's because of how the holidays fall.
Well, because it's like
and when they swap your cars.
Yes, when they swap cars. So I got 3 weeks with this, and I'm actually not sad about it. I have the 2025 Buick Enclave, which is fabulous to have when you have family in town because it seats a ton of people.
Both of the girls and
both the girls and a boyfriend and so that we got a whole crew, and then I can stick some cousins in there too. It'll be great. So so I have a really nice 3-row SUV, which I did the first drive for this back in like August, September or something. So I drove I want to say they had us drive 2 trims then, but I remember very, very vividly the Avenir, which is their top one. This time I have the Sport Touring, which is the middle. So I'm kind of getting some time in a different version of it. The thing that I think is the most noticeable, and I haven't had this for super long, but like enough to talk about it. They have continuous damping control on the Avenir. They don't have that on the other trims. You can tell the difference a little bit. Like the ride is a little bit smoother on that Avenir than it is on the Sport Touring. Not like the Sport Touring is horrible, but I thought, oh no, wait, this isn't not quite as well mannered. That's the phrase I'm going to use. It's not quite as well mannered. Still, I like the Enclave. So for this one, they made a bunch of changes. This is all new technically this year. This is the 3rd generation of this vehicle. It has a new engine. It's a 2.5 liter turbo 4 with 328 horsepower, 326 pound-feet of torque, and an 8-speed automatic. It's plenty of power to get this car going. It's relatively quiet. Although if you mash the gas on this, like if you really slam that pedal down to get on the highway, you do hear it, which I want to say, like, I love the sound of an engine as much as the next girl, but you kind of don't want to hear that in a car that's more premium. Like, I feel like that could be a little bit, the sound deadening could be a little bit better there because it is a lot of sound when you first accelerate to get onto the highway. Although it is nicely done the way it accelerates. That 8-speed automatic does a great job of managing the power, and it gets out of its own way. Like, it's got plenty of oomph, plenty to get it going. And decent fuel economy. I haven't checked out this week yet because I haven't done a ton of driving in this one, and it's all been very short stop city stuff, which I don't think is fair for fuel economy to give that number. But it's rated at 20 city, 27 highway, 33 combined. So not fantabulous, but also not horrible. When you consider that this is a great big 3-row SUV, that's actually pretty decent. So that's another reason I'm happy that I have it this week because, or these next 3 weeks, because I'll be doing lots of driving back and forth into the city and all over the place for family. I love what they've done with this. I think the styling on this, that whole Wildcat EV concept that they have, it sort of starts, the Buick lineup is taking little pieces of that and trying to make it into actual vehicles. And they did that with this. You can see it especially in the front. I love the new Buick badge. I know it's been around for a little bit now. It's not debuting on this, but the new shield that no longer has a circle, it's just the 3 little lines.
The 3 spears.
Yeah. So what do you think they look like? Would you just call them spears?
Yeah.
What do you think they look like, Robbie?
Or more like maybe
knives.
Knives. They make me think of claws for some reason. Like
claws.
like and something like clawed something out. Ow. Like, yeah. You got to make the sound effect too. And I'm like, so I like how that looks. I think it's a nice little, it's upgraded. It's updated and more stylish like this, the old school with a little circle around it feels like 1950. So I think it's good that they changed that up. Pricing wise on this. So it's interesting. The base trim of this is the preferred is $45,000. The sport touring I'm in is $49,400. And then it's an extra $2,000. Actually, I should take the $49,400 is with it's actually $47,400. It's $2,000 on any trim if you add all-wheel drive. So the $49,400 includes all-wheel drive. Not too bad. But then like the difference, think about it, from 45 preferred to 47 for this. The Avenir is $58,000. There's a huge jump.
Big jump.
It's a huge jump from sport touring to Avenir. So I was trying to think, like, is it worth it? Like, is it really worth essentially like $10,000 more? And maybe, I mean, it does. I mean, you get the better handling, smoother ride because of that continuous damping control, which makes a difference. You get nicer features. Everything gets a little upgraded. Everything's a little bit more premium. But I don't know if it's $10,000 more premium. Have you guys driven this at all?
I have not driven the Enclave yet.
Okay.
I've driven the Traverse. I did the first drive for the Traverse.
Okay.
And I mean, the Traverse and the Acadia, GMC Acadia, and the Enclave are the same platform, mechanically the same vehicle, different styling. Obviously very different interiors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you, I think you've driven all 3 now, right?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the differences between the 3?
So between the Enclave, the Traverse, and what was
the Acadia, GMC Acadia?
Enclave, Traverse. Oh, that's tough. I mean, they have very different. I definitely feel like they're all good. I think the Traverse is going to sound like I'm being insulting, but it's just like it feels like a Chevy. Chevy doesn't do the premium styling; they're a little more plastic. They're just not as high end. But I think the Traverse is great. I really like the GMC, but I think I'm kind of a GMC fan. But I think there's a difference. It comes down to these a little bit to style. It's style. It's features. It's not like really how they drive. They drive very similarly. I think the GMC is an upscale that's a little bit more bold, where Buick goes a little bit more refined and delicate. So it depends which you prefer on that front. I really like the way this looks. Styling wise, I like that little nose that they've done now. I like how they've styled the Buicks. So
it's a good look.
Yeah, I think it looks good. So I do like this. I like that it's 3 rows, but sitting in my driveway, and it's bigger than it was before even. it still doesn't look
not by much,
by a little skosh, little few bits, but I mean, technically not smaller, technically a little bit bigger. Yet you look at this sitting in my driveway and you would swear this was only a 2-row vehicle, but there is a third row you can genuinely use. It's not a third row where your knees are like squished and, you know, you feel hunched over. I think Robbie could sit in the third row. I don't know. I'm going to make Reza sit back there, and Reza's like,
there you go.
Feet. So next week I'll report if Reza's like, what, do you hate me? And if okay, right.
The third row is surprisingly roomy in this. I mean, these vehicles, these 3-row crossovers from GM are nearly the same size as a Tahoe or Yukon.
Yeah, they're big.
They're surprisingly large.
They're surprisingly large. And that's why I was so impressed. Like, you look at the inside, like, oh, there's lots of room in here. You look at the outside and just the way they've done the body style, it doesn't have that cumbersome giant SUV look to it. The curves and things make it look more appealing and more compact and not like this giant cumbersome thing. So I appreciate that. One of the things, so here's an interesting thing. I feel like this is a Sam thing. He's going to explain this to me. So I was looking, I actually pulled up my original first drive that I did, and it's the Avenir was the one in the drive. But when I look at the image that I have on the screen, and I think they have me scan a barcode, you know, when they have you scan the barcode and then you're using Google Maps to get yourself from place to place, it uses the entire like right-hand side of the screen, like the 30-inch screen on this, which is the, you know, from the edge of the instrument cluster all the way over. It's this giant long screen, but it's not perfectly rectangular. It sort of curves. So it's bigger. It's bigger at the top and comes down a little bit in on the.
Yeah, it's sort of a rounded trapezoid.
Yeah. Like around
the long edge on the top and the short edge on the bottom.
Right. So like not dramatically, but it is. It angles in a little bit. When I was looking at that image, I can see the map that happens to be on the screen in the picture I took runs the entire infotainment section. It's like the whole thing all the way to the top edge and all the way down to the slightly curved in bottom edge. When I do it with Apple CarPlay, it cuts off like that. It's a straight line. So you have this weird triangular shaped spot on the right hand side here, and is it because it's Apple? Is it because
I think it's and the same is true with Android Auto. I've seen it on other vehicles.
It looks awesome.
If you don't have a perfectly rectangular screen, the projection systems currently, the next generation CarPlay is supposed to be able to fill the entire screen area, but the current ones are only set up to fill a rectangular viewport.
So that's what I was figuring that it was. It was because literally of what the limitations of CarPlay were. But I'll tell you what, it looks really weird on this screen because if you look at because
you've got that excess piece hanging up.
Right. And it's not just like it's trimmed off a straight line that's an inch of screen or something. At the bottom, it sort of meets the bottom, but there's like this giant, and it's just like this flirty little green and blue image, like, you know, random background. It's not black. So you have this section of like, what's that for? It's just kind of weird. And actually he's like, why does it do that? And I said, I'm 99% sure it's because we're using Apple CarPlay. But now that he's pointed it out to me, it just drives me crazy every time I turn on the car.
And I think if I recall correctly, some of the newer Chevrolets, they're kind of the opposite where, you know, they're also not rectangular displays. And so there's similar, you know, if you use CarPlay or Android Auto, you know, you just get a rectangular window onto that projection system. And then there's some unused. Yeah,
it was. So, and it just must be the nature of this particular screen. It's a pretty, especially at the top where the screen is longer. This really, it's like, what's this little triangular wedge shaped nothing in the corner? Yeah. It's just
the void.
It's just
stare into it while you're driving.
Stare into the void of the right-hand corner. So that's a little weird. And I, double checked. I'm like, no, it uses the whole thing when it's the native system. But when you do Apple CarPlay, it's a little wonky. So I wasn't real keen on that. Otherwise, I enjoy driving this. I think it's a nice, it's a nice choice. Oh, and the other thing is this one that's a big deal this year is, and I want to mention that this is the first ever Buick to have Super Cruise, which I find sort of shocking. It says it's the first Buick to use Super Cruise. And
well, I mean, there's only 4 Buick models now.
Yeah, I guess.
Doesn't it feel like Buick as a premium brand should have had that sooner?
Yeah, but I mean, you've got the Invista, at the entry level, so that's probably not going to have it.
Okay.
The Encore GX is just a tiny step above that. So the only other one that would potentially get it would be the Envision.
So it could.
And I think that's still on an older platform. So I think when the Envision gets redesigned, it'll probably be able to support Super Cruise.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm not entirely surprised that the Enclave is the first.
It feels like it should have been there before.
Yeah.
Me. Like not surprised that Enclave was the first one to get it, but that it took this
nothing else
to get it. Yeah, that it was like, wow, it's really the first one. And I've been playing around with it a lot this week. I had a weird wonky thing happen that I'm not entirely sure. So I came off of a highway and I went to go underneath the overpass. And all of a sudden the Super Cruise is like, I'm available. I'm not available. Stop. Don't use me. I think it was getting confused, thinking somehow possibly I was on the highway. And my steering wheel was it was like Christmas lights, green, red, blue, green, red, blue. It was like,
probably wasn't sure which road you were actually on.
I was whether it was am I on the highway or am I just stopped underneath it? And it's been working okay. But you know what? It's not as smooth in this as I found it in other applications somehow. Even Russ was noticing I was turning it on. We were on the highway and not telling him. I'm like, I want to see if you can tell. He could tell every time. I could tell that I wasn't driving every time because he said he could feel the ping pong a little bit. And I could feel the ping pong a little bit as it was trying to center. So it's I'm gonna give it another. And I was trying to look are the lanes clear? Because we had some snow. Is something not clear to it? Is it too sunny? Is there a reflection? There was nothing that should have made it not work beautifully. It was not working beautifully. So we'll see what I feel after another week of driving or so. But yeah, so the Super Cruise was less.
Maybe something's not quite calibrated properly.
Because
the cameras is a little off.
That's what I'm literally wondering because I generally love Super Cruise.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, I can feel it. And I could feel it.
And on the Traverse, when I drove the Traverse in the summer, it didn't do that.
Right? I've never had it ping pong like that. So I wonder, not like it's slamming me back and forth, but just enough. I'm like, why can I feel this?
Yeah, it generally does not drift at all.
Right? And you can feel this one a little drift, a little drift, a little drift. And even sometimes taking on highways. So, it's not like it's a sharp right turn. It's a highway curve. It's having a little trouble. It's like, oh, wait, it's curve. And it sort of corrects almost a little bit late. It corrects the curve. So I'm curious if like you said, Sam, is something not quite calibrated properly on the one I have because normally I like it, but I'll play around with it for another 2 weeks and see if that changes at all. Or if there's something maybe, I don't know, blocking a sensor, who knows? We've had snow, maybe something's confusing it and there's salt somewhere, who knows?
Yeah. Usually if that's the case, it'll just not engage at all.
Right. It normally won't work. It'll say
if the sensor is blocked, it'll just say, sorry, it's not available.
But I wonder if it's blocked enough, not enough to say you can't work, but enough that it's throwing something off possibly. I should clean it all off and see if it gets any better.
Yeah. And, maybe let the Buick PR person know.
Yes, I will talk to the Buick people. I'm not throwing Buick under the bus. I think this one might be off. It's not that I think Super Cruise is off because I didn't have this happen on the one that I drove at the first drive. I remember thinking it was great. Yeah. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So something's a little weird. With the one
Sam, have you had a Super Cruise enabled vehicle in the last month or two?
Yeah, I had the Chevy Equinox EV a week ago.
Okay, because I had one. I had a Super Cruise enabled vehicle. I don't remember when, and it was a little weird compared to before. So I don't know. Maybe they pushed an update and then they pushed another update, then hasn't gone out. I don't know. It didn't seem as good as it was. It felt a little like something was a little off.
So
maybe something with me is a little off. Who knows? It could be that.
Well, that's usually a good default assumption.
I wonder when. Now I'm curious. Now I'm going to ask them when they last updated.
Yeah, because the Equinox I drove had no issues with it. It was rock solid.
I didn't run into any issues when I drove this back in. I guess I'm going to say it's August. My review ran on September 17th, so it's probably end of August, beginning of September when I did the first drive. Maybe. Yeah, I'm going to ask about that. Good point. Good thought, Robbie.
Yeah, sometimes I just kind of check updates and see how.
It may be that they may have changed something in the software that has made something more sensitive. Who knows?
Yeah,
it wasn't available on parts of the road where it was available before. That was one of the big things that when I had the last Super Cruise vehicle I had. I was like, well, this is very odd. What has changed? It's not like they haven't done any like construction on those roads, so I don't know. I should have looked up
I'm gonna
the software update. I thought it was just like, oh maybe there's something in the. I defaulted to maybe there's just something in the lens, but by the time I realized, I'm like, oh wait, it's the same spot, and other places it's sort of working.
That's curious. Well, for next week, I'll hopefully have an answer. I don't even know who's in the office this week, but I will message Yieldy good folks at Buick and see.
I mean, the PR people should be monitoring their emails 24 hours a day, regardless of whether they're in the office.
There's
3 in the morning.
They're all working hybrid anyway. So they're only in the office maybe 1 or 2 days a week, but they should have their phone on them continuously
them at all times,
and they should never have do not disturb turned on, so that if you send them an email at 3 a.m, they should be responding within 10 minutes.
Here's the weird thing: I feel bad saying what I know you're like teasing, but the funny thing is, like, I'll randomly something will happen. I'll be like, oh, I should email them about that, and they email me back like any of the PR pro. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, I didn't want a response now. I was looking for this on Monday. I just didn't want to forget about it.
So when Tesla used to have a PR department, Elon Musk was notorious for just tweeting out like ridiculous changes or updates or features or whatever to Tesla products at like 9-10 o'clock at night on Sundays. And so then I was like, because I cover Tesla, so I would get an alert every time he did something. Yeah. And I would email the PR team, and they're like, this is the first I'm hearing of this. Let me get back to you. Can I get back to you tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Like, what's happened?
What has your boss done now?
Yeah, they're just like, what? Oh, okay.
It's not. I mean, it's frankly not surprising, that they had a very high rate of turnover in that group. So
it's a tough. That was a very. I can't say much, but I know a lot of like inside what was going on. Anyone who survived that job more than I would have quit within a day.
I was amazed that Alexis Georgeson lasted as long as she did.
Right. Yeah. I went and had coffee with her after she left Tesla, and it was nice. I was happy for her that she wasn't there anymore.
All right. Anything else on the Enclave?
That's it. And I'm messaging the folks at Buick right now. Let's see if the poor person at Buick is trying to enjoy her weekend or she responds.
I know it's the weekend before a major holiday, but
I'll send you a message right now. I know I should be.
Tell me the updates of the.
And when you're in product PR for an automaker or really any big company, work-life balance tends to become non-existent, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're stuck on our time because we don't have work-life balance either.
None.
Well, that is one thing that my new boss, emphasized, is that, he expects, 8 to 5, and then after that, we're on our own, no, he wants work-life balance for his team. So
does my boss. But it was just like, it's very funny because it's like, journalism. Like, I'm like, ha, 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 ha. He's like, no, it's 5 o'clock. You're done. I'm like, I don't know if that's true. So everyone on the team is just like, would you stop it? Just stop. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's bad habits is what it is. It's bad habits because of the career. So yeah.
Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you're not alone. With over 1,000 hormone disruptors in our environment, it's no wonder things can feel out of balance. On top of that, natural changes like PMS, menopause, and other life stages can leave you feeling tired, irritable, and trapped in a constant battle with your body. But here's the good news. You don't have to suffer through it. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is here to help. This herbal formula fine-tunes your hormones, balancing estrogen, testosterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol, which can contribute to weight gain, racing thoughts, poor sleep, and more. With over 40,000 five-star reviews and a bottle selling every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. Ready to feel like yourself again? For a limited time, get 15% off your first order at happymammoth.com using code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media. All right, Robbie, what about you?
I didn't drive anything this week. I've had a lot of stuff going on, but I did build a giant Nintendo Entertainment System
I saw pictures of that.
What?
So that's like driving. So yeah, so one of the clubs that my band has played at a bunch. Every time there's
Which
an
band?
cancel list, North American Scum.
Oh, okay.
So they played there at this club, Rickshaw Stop in San Francisco. It's a wonderful club, especially with like dance. If you like dancing to like bands and DJs, it's great. The staff there is always wonderful. The owner's great. The Dan, the guy who books things, he's great. So they reached out because someone had canceled, and because they know I'm ridiculous and I'll just come up with goofy things, I think. So I was like, why don't we have an 80s NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, an 80s NES holiday dance party? And so none of my bands were available. Like none of the people in any of my band, I couldn't get it. None of the drummers were available. None of the bass players were available. Like half the guitarists. No, none of the guitarists were available. So no one was available. So I booked 2 bands, and then I booked a DJ. And then because of Nintendo, I had sent a message when I pitched the show. I said, oh, and I might make one of these. And there's a couple people online who have already made giant Nintendo controllers. And I'm like, yeah, I might make one of these. Ha, ha, ha. And then the article, the landing page went up for the event. And the landing page is like, play a giant Nintendo. I'm like, oh, I guess I am making one of these. So I built a very, it's 3 feet, 4 feet wide, and then like a few feet deep. Yeah, I built a giant Nintendo controller, and then we played it on they have a big screen behind the the behind the stage, and then I brought a Nintendo Mini, which I just hooked up to one of my monitors, and then I brought an original Nintendo built in 1986, and I hooked it up to a black and white TV that was maybe like 6 inches, so it's this teeny tiny little black and white TV to recreate what some people when they played their first Nintendo and they had to play it on the second TV. So it was everyone had fun, but I had to be at the club around 5-ish. I didn't finish the Nintendo controller until 3:30 that day.
Oof.
So I finished it, and then I was like, oh, I got to get ready. I had to pack all my gear, and I ran to the club. So I didn't drive anything, but I built a giant Nintendo controller. So if you live in the Bay Area, keep an eye out. I think we're going to do another one of these parties just because I built this giant controller, and damn it, I need to do something.
Got to use it.
I got to use it. Giant Nintendo controller. That was my car for the week.
It's a solid accomplishment for the week, Robbie.
It's something.
I am adding this to the show notes right now. Link to the little video clip in the Blue Sky post. All right. Robbie's giant Nintendo controller.
Robbie's giant Nintendo controller.
Okay. All right. Well, since we didn't, last week was kind of a different episode where I spent, I had a segment where I recorded with you, Robbie, talking about cruise, and then I spent a bunch of time talking to Chad Kirshner about the Dodge Charger Daytona, and had a couple of interviews from the Daytona Charger drive. There was no regular car reviews, so I got two vehicles to talk about this time. Okay. One, of course, as we mentioned, is the Chevy Equinox EV. The one that I had was the RS. Let me find it. Let's see. It was the 3RS. So this is the top of the line version. This thing was loaded. It had all-wheel drive. So on the Equinox, the all-wheel drive that they offer on there is more like the type of all-wheel drive you typically get on a front-wheel drive-based crossover. So most of the power, you got the big motor on the front axle, and then a smaller motor on the rear axle that comes in mainly just when it starts to detect some slip on the front axle, or you want full acceleration, and it's about 287 horsepower combined. Which is fine. It's adequate for this vehicle. It's not going to be winning any drag races against a Model 3 Performance or anything like that. But you don't need to. That's this is a vehicle for somebody that wants good, solid transportation, roomy, hopefully reliable. We'll only time will tell on that. At a reasonable price point. The Equinox EV, as we've talked about before, is actually quite a bit larger than the gas Equinox. It's smaller than the Blazer EV, but it's not a large vehicle. It's larger than the gas Equinox, but it's not huge. It's actually quite a reasonable size. But with its 116-inch wheelbase, it is very, very roomy inside. I like the way the Equinox looks. I actually prefer it to the Blazer. It's a little less over the top in its design, a little more restrained, but still looks attractive. I probably wouldn't buy one in the all black configuration that the test vehicle was in. I would probably go for one of the two-tone combinations, or especially the blue. I really like the blue that they have on the Equinox EV. But like I said, the 3RS is the loaded model. It's got all the available options. It's with all-wheel drive, it's rated at 285 miles of range. And this is from an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack. So this is the same battery that you get in the Honda Prologue. And it's fine. It's really good, and what we're starting to see from some of the tests that have been done is that these things are regularly exceeding their official EPA rated range. And there's Edmunds got a base model, 1LT, the $35,000 model, which amazingly enough, GM had one available for them to test. It's rare for an automaker to actually have a base model of anything available, but Edmunds got the base model, which is front wheel drive, and it's rated at 319 miles of range. On their range test, they got 356 miles out of that thing, which is really, really good. If you can get a $35,000 EV that'll go 350 miles, you're doing all right. And for now, at least, you can still get the $7,500 tax credit on there, and it's not just on a lease; it's also if you buy it. So you could drive out, with a base model Equinox EV, for like 27 and a half plus tax. And that, the 27 and a half, those prices include, GM advertises their prices now, including delivery charges, which is really good. Everyone should do that. That should be mandatory.
Good job, GM.
And so, 350 miles of range from a sub $30,000 EV that has room for 5 people inside. And we're talking lots of leg room, lots of headroom. It's a really good vehicle. And like I said, the one I had was in all black wheels, black trim on the outside. Looks a little sinister, but so kind of a little boring. I prefer as you know, I prefer to have the bold colors on the cars. So the blue or the red is what I would recommend. On the 3RS, well, actually, all the Equinoxes, even that base trim, have basically the same infotainment system. So you get the same 17.7 inch infotainment display, the touchscreen in the center, that you also get on a $100,000 Silverado EV, or on most of GM's other new, or Chevrolet's other new vehicles. Same 11-inch instrument cluster display. You get it's got their Android Automotive infotainment system, which is basically the same system that was in that Enclave, but minus the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto support because it's electric, and we've had this discussion before. And they give you 8 years of connectivity included with the price of the car for the infotainment. So there's all that. Plus, this 3RS also had Super Cruise on it. Unlike the Enclave, the Super Cruise worked great on this one. Had no issues with it bouncing around. It worked beautifully. All together, all of the options came to grand total of $51,400, which is $52,795, which is a little on the pricey side. The interior of the Equinox does not necessarily feel quite as premium as as what you might expect for $50,000, but it actually does feel quite a bit more premium than the similarly priced Honda Prologue. The Prologue is slightly bigger, but the Prologue actually feels cheaper inside compared to the Equinox. Mm-hmm. My only real complaint about the interior of the Equinox, it's got the same seats that are in the Blazer, which I found to be kind of flat, not as supportive as I would like. No. But, again, seats are a very personal thing. You got to try it out. Most people are probably going to be fine with it. I think, they're easy to get in and out of. If you are, planning to go, bombing down twisty country roads, probably not the best seats in the world, but for everyday driving, they're great. They were comfortable. They just don't have a huge amount of lateral support. So overall, I really like the Equinox, and it actually got the bulk of my votes for the North American Utility of the Year.
Did it? That's right, because we all just voted. In fact, I think our deadline to finish voting is tomorrow. So
it is, yeah.
So we'll all cast our votes.
Yeah, well, I submitted my ballot yesterday, after I spent the day yesterday driving the Kia K4, which was the last one I hadn't driven yet. And I'll talk about that next time. But I think the Equinox EV is right now is the most important EV in GM's lineup because it's the most affordable.
Oh, definitely.
It's in a market segment that I think will appeal to a lot of people. It's got a lot of cargo space in the back. It's got a lot of room inside for driver and occupants. It's comfortable. It is, the ride quality is really good. It handles surprisingly well. Again, at that $35,000 price point, you're obviously not going to get things like Super Cruise. You're going to get cloth seats, but you get, the same infotainment system, and when you consider that with the tax credits, you're getting that down, under $30,000. Even this one, you're down with the tax credits, you're going to be down around $45,000. And because it's built here with a domestically produced battery, you get the tax credit whether you lease or buy. So if you want to just buy it outright, you can do that and still get that same deal. There's lots of ADAS features, front pedestrian and bicyclist braking, for collision alert, lane keeping assist, in addition to the Super Cruise, blind spot monitoring, rear automatic braking, all kinds of good stuff. So I really like the Equinox EV. This is, of all of GM's current generation of EVs, this is actually my favorite. This is the one that I would actually consider spending my money on.
Yeah, I do think it's a strong offering. I can see that. I would agree with you. It's a really good car, and I think it is super important for them. And they've knocked it out of the park.
Yep. All right. Oh, you want to take a guess at the destination charge?
$1,100.
$1,295.
Nicole gets it. She's off by just $100. $1,395.
Okay, go me.
That's a lot.
Yeah. All right. The other vehicle that I drove was also a two-motor electric crossover or SUV, but it was slightly more expensive. This was the Rivian R1S.
Oh, not that much more.
With the Max Pack, let's see, what else? So it's the R1S Adventure with the Max Pack, and this is the updated version that has the new electronic architecture, the new Rivian built motors, the official range. Actually, I need to double check that while I'm talking. But overall, it looks roughly the same as the first iteration of the R1S. If you look very closely, you'll see detailed changes in the lighting and some other things. The one that I had was all in black and had the black package on it. So all the badges and everything on the outside are in black, and the wheels are black. So much like the Equinox, it's very black, which, again, it's fine, but, a little boring. But the 2025 R1S, let's see, where's the Max Pack? R1S Dual Max, is rated at 410 miles of range. When I had it, it was starting to get fairly cold. So it was, what I was seeing in terms of range, was probably closer to about 360, 370. I didn't do a full on range test with it, but based on the energy efficiency it was getting, it was good. Yeah, I like the design of the R1. Overall, I like the interior layout. The third row seat, is, I would say, actually not as roomy as what you get in the Enclave, but adequate certainly for a couple of teenagers, adults, a couple of adults for a shorter trip. I wouldn't want to do a long distance road trip with a couple of adults in the back unless they were relatively modest in stature. But my biggest complaints about, first let me finish with the good stuff. The updated R1s, the ride quality is way better than the originals. The originals were always kind of stiff and harsh feeling, especially on Michigan roads. When you hit frost heaves and potholes and things like that, you really felt it. This is more compliant. It's still really well controlled, but it's definitely a lot more compliant over rough pavement. A lot more pleasant to drive. The first and second rows very roomy. Lots of nice features in here. The updated ADAS system. It's at this point it's still not a hands-off system like Super Cruise. That is supposed to be coming sometime in the springtime of 2025 via an over-the-air software update. So right now it's still technically hands-on. Works much better than it did before. The last time I drove it a couple of years ago. But one thing I noticed that has me a little concerned, and I sent a note to Rivian and haven't really gotten an answer back on this yet. When you look at the visualization on the instrument cluster, where it shows you the other cars around you that it's detecting, the question I asked Rivian and haven't gotten an answer to is this visualization actually representative of what the perception system thinks it's seeing around it, and what's going into the control for the lane centering and adaptive cruise control? Because if it is, it has me kind of concerned. If what I'm seeing visualized is being done in a separate path, separate processing path, and is not representative of what's being used, then it doesn't matter. But what I see is similar to what I see in Teslas and some other vehicles, where when it shows you the other vehicles that are around you, they tend to bounce around a lot. They're not really where they, I can look up at a car that's, in the adjacent lane and see that it's just rocking straight down the center of the lane. And yet the visualization is showing it moving all over the place.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, I'll see a vehicle that's moving, maybe shifting towards, making a lane change to the left or to the right. And the visualization is showing it coming to the left. And why this is important is because if the system is making decisions based on that information, part of what any type of system like this, any type of automation has got to do is not just got to detect what's around you, but also make predictions about what those other road users are going to do in the next few seconds. And from that, then it determines what path it's going to take. If the system thinks that a car is going to be moving over into your lane, then you've got to make decisions about that, just like you would as a human. If you look up and you see a car starting to drift into your lane, okay, maybe you back off a little bit, give them some room.
Mm-hmm.
If the car is moving towards you, but the visualization shows it moving away from you, then it might potentially make wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And that's not good. It didn't really do anything bad while I was driving it, but it has me concerned, as they move towards more sophisticated systems that go hands off, in the coming months. And so that's something that Rivian needs to work on. My other big complaint is, like Tesla and like some other newer EV brands, they're going all in on the stupid touchscreen stuff. We talked before about Wassim Ben Said, when he was at TechCrunch Disrupt a month or two ago, talking about how buttons and switches in car interiors are an anomaly and shouldn't be there. He is absolutely 100% wrong.
No, that's wrong.
Having to go into a touchscreen to adjust the damn vents is stupid. It is dumb.
It's such a weird choice. Nobody likes that.
I know. And, to me, that is a deal breaker. No matter how good the rest of the vehicle is, I will not buy a vehicle that does that. It's just wrong. And, I think a lot of other people would feel the same way, especially if they realize it before they buy it. If they go out and test drive it and don't really check that, then that's unfortunate. But I will never ever buy a vehicle that controls vents that way.
Yeah, I think it's the stupidest idea. And it's funny because when you talk to people, because who's the other one that does it? Lincoln does it with the Nautilus, if I'm remembering right.
Lincoln does it on the new Nautilus and on the updated Navigator, it has the same thing.
It's like when you talk to the people behind that decision, they very wholeheartedly, like, well, we think it's great. I'm like, do you? Like,
have you talked to anybody?
I just would once like an OEM to fess up, like, this was a bad choice. And be like, yeah, we've gotten mixed feedback on that. We'll see how that goes going forward. I'd be like, huzzah! Thank you for admitting that you guys made a bad choice.
Well, Hyundai said that. They're like, people want buttons. And so we're going to do buttons.
Like, good job, Hyundai.
People want buttons.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody needs to say that.
Like a lot of industries, if one company does it, then a bunch of other companies follow suit. Everyone copies each other. And I think I can't remember who did it first. Oh, it was Tesla.
Yeah.
I can't remember apparently. And so no, it's a bad decision. I don't know why people think. I mean, you look at the feedback on Teslas. Some of the Tesla audience, especially the most vocal. They're an edge case, to be honest, compared to other OEMs, because these people are fanatical about their vehicle. And so if you're another OEM, you're like, oh, these people absolutely love this. I'm like, well, yeah, they absolutely love absolutely everything about these vehicles, regardless of whether it was a good idea or not. Yeah, it's for a lot of people it is a cult, and so I think they got some folks got bamboozled, and now they're like, oh, but no, it's good. And we're like, no, it's not. It's not good. It's the opposite of good. It's infuriating.
Yes, very much so. So anyway, the R1S, let me go back and find that tab now. The R1S that I had came to $102,750. Which
more than the Equinox.
Yes, a little more than the Equinox. 665 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. It is very quick. It's much quicker than the Equinox.
Which doesn't make sense because it's a truck or not truck. It's an SUV and it's large and it shouldn't be that quick. But that's a whole other thing that I'm always complaining about. So
yeah. But yeah, the dual motor are all-wheel drive with the Max Pack. And this one did not have the all-terrain package, so it doesn't have good all-terrain tires, but it does have air suspension. Overall, I mean, aside from some of the functionality because of the lack of physical controls, the interior is actually really nice. The seats are comfortable. You got this dark ash wood trim on the dashboard. It all looks really good. The new graphics, that they launched this year, the more cartoony graphics look cool. They look fun, rather than the more photorealistic graphics they had before. Mine had the panoramic glass roof and all that stuff. So lots of cool things in there, but the vent controls is a deal breaker. It's just not going to happen.
It's such a weird decision, but
it's funny because it sounds like we're ranting about something that in the grand scheme is relatively minor about a car, but I still maintain it's the little things about your driving experience that get you. It's not that it didn't have quite enough horsepower, not that it didn't have quite the handling you wanted. It's like some niggling little thing, like there's never a spot to put my wallet, or my phone always slides out of the the Wi-Fi charger. Like it's the weird little things that make you just want to stab it.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah, because it's the weird little things that what you get used to in your vehicle, and when you're like, oh wait, this isn't working the way it's supposed to. And here's a funny little story from yesterday. So when the Ioniq 5 came out, a lot of people, including myself, complained like, well, why doesn't it have a rear windshield wiper? And they're like, oh, but you don't really need it because it's a hatchback, and blah. They had a billion reasons why. But the reality is like they wanted to cut down on drag. My wife calls me yesterday when she's driving to work, and we bought this vehicle. We got our Ioniq 5 in the summer. Well, it's been raining a lot, and my wife called and was like, "Hey, I can't figure out how to turn on the rear windshield wiper. Like we had it in the
Kona?
The Kona that had a rear." And I'm like, "Oh, it doesn't have one. It's one of the things everyone complained about." She's like. It's just one of those things. You're just like, I like everything about this car until this right now. And
she's now like, now I hate the car, right? Silly little thing.
You have to send it back and get the new 2025.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm like, well, the new one has, for regular people, that doesn't make any, who cares?
Yeah.
That's the thing is at the end of the day, like for people, who care, they're like, I don't care. I don't care. So yeah.
All right.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.
Well, that's it for the Rivian R1S. So let's talk a little bit about Operation Frodo, which I participated in last weekend, beginning of this week. I talked about it before. My friend Nick Miles, who lives out in Portland, Oregon, launched this a couple of years ago to bring rescue beagles from the middle of the country out to the Pacific Northwest. Apparently, it is in Nebraska. It is not illegal at the end of hunting season to just abandon your hunting dog in the woods. Just leave them there.
Aww.
And there's also puppy mills that, if they don't sell the puppies by the time they're 4 months old, they don't want them. They'll either just, shoot them, or, if they can find a rescue, or a shelter to take them, they'll do that.
Dump them.
Yeah. So in 2022, Nick got a couple of friends and they transported 6 beagles from Omaha, Nebraska to Portland, Oregon. Last year they did 10. This year, 20 of us participated. And we got 23 dogs. The 23rd is actually on his way to Portland right now as we speak. We transported 22 dogs last week, and 7 adults and 15 puppies. We got vehicles loaned to us by Kia. We had a Kia Carnival, a Genesis GV70, a Hyundai Santa Fe. There was a Ford Explorer, a Subaru Forester, and Aaron Gold brought Motor Trend's long-term Mercedes Sprinter van, which we used to move a couple of the dogs and also a lot of the support stuff, all the pens and things like that.
Candy.
Food and all that good stuff. And we got cash donations from individuals as well as Nissan paid for all the gas, which was quite a significant bill.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
And Infinity paid for the travel expenses for the hotels and meals and stuff. So thank you to everybody. It was a pretty amazing event.
I've helped a little bit behind the scenes with that event the last few years, and the timing has never worked for me to be able to drive it because I've always had conflicting things. So I have not been able to drive during Operation Frodo, maybe next year, but it is amazing to see what everyone pulls together. And I think it's such a worthwhile cause. And it's just a feel good moment for us as auto journalists, I think, to do something positive and good at the end of the year that,
instead of being a bunch of whining, entitled complainers.
Exactly.
Actually do something good for the world.
Exactly. Instead of complaining the lack of, shrimp on the buffet at dinner.
Why is there no shrimp? Why is this? Why do I need to use a computer to change my vents?
Why? So instead we can save some doggos. And so we save some doggos and then we make some other humans happy in the process because they're adopting these dogs. So I think it's a neat thing. And I really hope one of these days I can actually drive the event because I've, like I said, a little behind the scenes stuff, but never been able to drive.
Yeah. This year I did the first 2 legs from Omaha to Denver to Salt Lake City. And then next year I want to try and do the whole thing.
Wow.
And so what we did was Harvey Briggs was kind of the director of logistics.
Yes.
Trying to wrangle all these journalists and cars and everything else and the hotels and so we each got assigned, a couple of dogs that were our charges for our time on the trip. And then each day, we were assigned to one of the vehicles and a driving partner, and they switched it up every day so we wouldn't get too sick of each other. So the first day I drove in the GV70 with Jeff Zersmead, and I had two puppies that I was looking after. Jeff had an adult beagle who her name was Gracie. She had been apparently been kept in a crate basically her whole life and was really anxious. We couldn't put her in a crate while we were driving. So she sat on our laps while we were driving. And during one leg when Jeff was driving, I had a dog bed on my lap and she just curled up and slept for 2 hours, which was great. The night before we departed, the folks from Basset and Beagle Rescue of the Heartland in Omaha brought over a few of the dogs, a couple of the puppies, and also one of the adult dogs, Melvin, to the hotel we were staying at, so we could meet them and meet a few of the dogs. And Paul Eisenstein almost immediately fell in love with Melvin. And one of the things about the 22 dogs is, the dogs we were transporting already had been claimed by somebody, either by a permanent adoptive home or by fosters. So there were some dogs that we couldn't bring with us, including Melvin's brother, Fred. But Paul fell in love with Melvin. The two of them just bonded. It was amazing. And by the end of that night, Paul was on a FaceTime call with his wife and decided he wanted to bring Melvin home. He wanted to adopt Melvin. And the next day he was talking to the director of Cascade Beagle Rescue in Portland and said, "Hey, I want to adopt Melvin." And it turns out, he had already been claimed by a family in Portland that, was hoping to get him in time for Christmas. And so Paul was just heartbroken. I mean, he was in tears. And so the second day when we were driving, I was driving with Nick Miles, and he's making calls, trying to figure out if there's a way that we could arrange for Paul to get Melvin. And the family in Portland said, "Hey, if you can get us Fred, Melvin's brother, by Christmas, Paul can have Melvin. That's okay." And so then it was figuring out the logistics of how to do that. So from Salt Lake City on Tuesday morning, Paul rented a car, drove back to Detroit over 2 days with Melvin. And then this morning he flew from Detroit to Kansas City, where he met up with the folks from the Omaha Rescue who brought Fred. And Paul is currently in flight from Kansas City to Portland to deliver Fred to a family in Portland. And then he's going to fly home. So, but, since this is also a show where we review vehicles. The GV70, very nice to drive for 7 hours. Very pleasant to drive that from Omaha to Denver. And a few weeks back, we had an email from a listener that was complaining about the ADAS stuff in the GV70, the adaptive cruise and the lane centering in the GV70, their highway drive assist. And again, as I said then, I think that there was probably something wrong with that specific car that was causing it to misbehave, because, driving all day in the GV70, across Nebraska and Colorado, the system was flawless. It was very smooth, had no issues with it at all. And we were having some pretty strong winds, driving across the plains. And then the second day, I was in the car with Nick Miles in the Kia Carnival hybrid. And from Denver, we drove northwest up to Wyoming and then across I-80. And as we were getting into Wyoming, we were getting really strong crosswinds, like 50, 60 mile an hour crosswinds. And the Carnival, like all other Hyundai and Kia products, has basically the same highway drive assist that's in the GV70. And it did fantastic, even, with these really strong crosswinds. The system, I could feel the wheel constantly adjusting, but it was adjusting itself, and it was tracking the center of the lane. So a lot of times when you're driving in a crosswind, you're constantly having to steer into the wind, to keep it from blowing off the road. This thing basically handled that. I just, had my hands on the wheel, but it was adjusting itself, and it did a really fantastic job. And up until we hit those winds, the Carnival was averaging like 30, 31 miles per hour, or miles per gallon, I should say. And once we got onto I-80, when we were heading straight west towards Salt Lake City, we were driving straight into that 55 mile an hour wind. And, at highway speeds, the effective airspeed over the vehicle, was in the, triple digits. And the fuel economy obviously dropped off pretty significantly. But it was down in the low 20s for a good part of that. And then as we got into Utah and headed down towards Salt Lake City, it picked up a little bit into the mid 20s. But it was both were fantastic cars to drive on a long road trip like that, and did really, really well. Much better than the Sprinter. The Sprinter that Aaron Gold was driving, as a Sprinter 2500 all-wheel drive. It was a tall roof Sprinter, so basically like driving a barn. And on that first day, especially driving through Nebraska, when we got to Denver, he said that he had the stability control activate like 4 times because of the wind tossing this thing around. So it's nothing specific about the Sprinter that was the problem. It's just driving a big vehicle like that in heavy winds.
It's tough.
Can be challenging. So be careful out there if you're doing that. If you're doing a long trip like that in a big vehicle of that type.
Yeah, that's all.
They have a what do you call it? Crosswind control on those Sprinters. Mercedes, they added it. I remember they also added it to the smart cars. So it would have been worse. So that's the
no, it would have been a lot worse. And a lot of manufacturers have something like that now, but still, I mean, it can only do so much. And when you in this case, it was still, the wind was still tossing it around and still causing it to activate the stability control, which is kind of weird. So, so that was what I drove. The Hyundai Santa Fe, Tanya Gazdik was driving that one. There was something going on with that vehicle that
why I like this. What happened?
Driving was fine, but when we parked at gas stops or lunch stop or potty breaks for the dogs, after a few minutes of sitting parked, it would start honking the horn, like the alarm or the panic button, just randomly. And
was it in our pocket, the key fob?
It was, but even if you took it out of the pocket, so it's not, the button was not getting pressed. If you took it out and put it on the table and wait a few minutes, it would start to honk the horn, and then you'd have to press the button to get it to stop. So there's something flaky going on with that particular vehicle. Because I had Santa Fe a few weeks ago and did not have any such issues. So I don't know what was going on there.
I had a neighbor who had one of those. Not a Santa Fe, but they had a vehicle that when it got really cold, it was an old, I believe it was an old Cadillac, but when it got super cold, like in the 20s, between 15 and 20 degrees, the connections it would get so cold, so suddenly it would make the connection for the horn. So in the middle of the night, the car horn would just go off.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
And it was my girlfriend's mom at the time, and so I would go out and I get 2 or 3 in the morning and have to pull the fuse.
Oh my gosh.
People looking out their window like, what the hell is going on?
Probably the biggest challenge we had on the whole thing was just the puppies, because these puppies had never been leash trained. They were not really socialized, and so when we got out to give them a break, trying to wrangle 15 puppies on leashes, when they're not, especially my two, and they were all very, very timid and, they're terrified. And it got, I actually, my puppies my two did not want to walk on a leash. And, when I went to take them outside when we were at the hotel at night, I actually had to pick them up and carry them outside because they would not walk down the hall on a leash. And they were trembling the whole time. So now that they've got forever homes, hopefully they'll calm down.
Yes.
Yeah. They'll be. Yeah.
All right. Jean Jennings. Either of you two know Jean? Had interacted with her much over the years?
I had the opportunity to drive with her twice, and I met her when we gave her an award, like a Lifetime Achievement Award out here at the New England Motor Press Association a few years back. So did not know her well, but did have the pleasure of driving with her, and she was wonderful.
Yeah, she died this week, and she was 70. She was a pretty amazing woman. She was an editor at Car and Driver. She dropped out of University of Michigan and got a job as a welder and then later a test driver at the Chrysler Proving Grounds in Chelsea, Michigan, and then convinced David E. Davis to hire her at Car and Driver, and rose up through the ranks at Car and Driver. Was basically David E. Davis's second in command there. Later, after David left Car and Driver and started Automobile, she joined him over there, and they eventually had a falling out. David left. She became editor-in-chief, so she was the first woman editor-in-chief of a major automotive publication. And so many people worked with her over the years. Unfortunately, in the last few years, she suffered from Alzheimer's and was not in great shape. And she died earlier this week. But she could be challenging to work for. This is probably the kindest way to put it. But everybody that ever worked for her had huge respect for her and the work that she did. And, everybody says, they learned a lot from her. She lived one hell of a life, had an amazing collection of hats.
She had fabulous hats. I remember the one she wore at IMPA. It was this like black hat that kind of sat on your head, like almost like a winter hat, but then it had these fronds coming off like whoosh, in all directions, almost like a little umbrella of black with little pom-pommy things.
That's actually the one that I picked that is going to be on the show art for this
I love
episode.
that hat. It was fabulous.
Yeah. She was quite a character. I got to spend some time with her in the years leading up to lockdown. I actually had not seen her in person since 2020. And that's when her health started declining. But prior to that, I feel lucky that I got to meet her and know her and spend time talking with her over the years. And, that's one of the cool things about being in this business is, I've gotten to meet a lot of people that I grew up reading their work in the various magazines. Glad I've gotten to know some of them over the years. Already lost a few of them now, including Tony Swan and now Jean. I think they're planning a memorial service for her in February, working on something. So.
Yeah.
All right. The Fiat 500e. I know we've complained about that. We like the car, but complained about the price.
And the cup holder.
And the cup holder.
Don't forget the cup
holder is so weird.
Well,
it's so weird. And it's a fun little car, but it's a lot of money for what you're getting. You're like, it's hard to, yeah.
This week, Tommy Mica from TFL leased one basically for free for 27 months.
Oh my God.
In Colorado, you've got the federal tax credits, you got state tax incentives. And we've talked before about some of the crazy lease deals on the Nissan Leaf in the last couple of months. And now Stellantis is doing crazy leases on the 500e. And all Tommy had to pay was the sales tax. Paid like $1,300 in sales tax.
Oh my gosh.
No monthly payment for the car. For 27 months. Yeah. And he's got to pay for insurance.
He has a burner. You can't fit his dog in the car with him with that little thing.
Well, that goes in the other cars. Yeah.
No, I guess in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
Still don't think there's room.
Yeah, I just sit there. It's comfy. Just get a little seatbelt.
Just slide the passenger seat all the way back. You can get a burner in there.
Okay. Tommy, can you tell us if he'll fit in the front? Tommy listens to the show sometimes. We need to know if the dog fits in the front of the car.
We need photos.
We
don't need you to know. We need photos.
We need photographic evidence of this, Tommy.
I'll ask him for that. All right. Also, Stellantis, the Ram REV has been pushed back from 2025 to 2026, and they're going to build Ramchargers first. Any surprise there?
Not really.
Zero.
I mean, the Stellantis isn't doing great. And so they need to, unlike some of the automakers, they're pushing, like Ford pushing back EVs. I'm like, you guys, you keep selling a lot of these, and then you raise the price, and then you don't sell them, and then you're like, I don't know about this whole EV thing. You're like, what are you doing? Whereas like Stellantis, Nissan, when they're like, oh hey, we kind of have to make money to stay in business.
Yeah.
and I do like the idea of the Ramcharger. I just hope people plug them in, because I think there's what you're going to get is most of the people most of the time never using the gas engine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only time most Ramcharger owners are going to use the gas engine is if they're towing a long distance.
Probably.
Yeah, I think they're going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, they should be launching this thing probably sometime in the first quarter. They say first half of 2025.
No, it should be cool.
Yeah,
I'm really excited about the Ramcharger. I want to see how it, because the Rams are great trucks. And I think this is the sort of what this market wants. And so when you have the Ram, you have the Ramcharger, and you pull up to your friend, you can just put in gas mode, so it goes boom, boom with that V6. Even though it doesn't really work that way, I think they'll like just turn it on, and then the rest of the time they can just drive around in EV mode.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they price the Ramcharger.
It's kind of
I got a feeling that we're going to start to see some more aggressive pricing from Stellantis in North America, because one of the issues that caused Carlos Tavares to be pushed out as CEO was that he was insisting on keeping prices high in order to maintain margins over volume, and that was hitting Stellantis pretty hard on the volume of especially Rams and Jeeps.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were ending up with a lot of unsold inventory because they were just priced too high.
Yeah,
and,
so that hurts the dealers.
Yeah,
which and cry river for dealers, but whatever. But it hurts dealers, and if you don't have the cars on the road, people don't know about them.
Yeah,
every car sold is a little bit of marketing.
Yep. So looking forward to trying out the Ramcharger next year and seeing how that one does. I have a feeling it's probably actually going to sell pretty well.
Oh, I think it'll do well.
Yeah, I hope so. Well.
You can get a Fiat 500 in Northern California for $179 a month, for $3,000 down. That's a pretty sweet deal for.
If you live in Colorado, you can get it for free.
Right.
I know. If I lived in Colorado, I could get it for free. I bet we can get this down. If it gets down to $99, I might go get a. I don't even know why. I have a car. I don't need another car. I have the BRZ, and we have the Ioniq 5, and then whatever. We don't need something else. But at the same time, like $99 a month for a Fiat 500, which again, fun little car.
Yeah. Just too expensive to buy. But if you can lease it for a crazy price like that, why not?
Yeah.
What do you got to lose? The only thing is, you do have to have a credit rating over 700.
Oh,
because it's a lease. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have okay credit. I think it's like low 700s, but yeah, my wife is she's a better adult than I am. Let's just say that.
Well, no shock.
Everything about my wife is like
better than Robbie.
It's better than me. Yes. Yeah. Everything is better than me. I'm just a bumbling idiot who got lucky.
You got lucky you married your wife.
Yep.
I know. I feel the same way.
I tricked her. I got her.
All right. The Durango. Remember how the Durango Hemis were supposed to go away at the end of this year?
I do.
Yeah. Well, not quite. There's enough demand that they're going to keep building them into 2025.
Of course they are. That's the Dodge way.
Including Hellcats. So you can still get a Hellcat Durango in 2025.
Someone bought one, put it because it was a Hemi. It's going to be the Hemi. Lads, you're not going to Hellcat. You're not going to be able to get it. And then they sold it, or they paid like an insane amount of money, and then someone else bought it from them for an insane amount of money, and now they both feel had.
Yeah, well, you remember when they first launched the Hellcat Durango in 2021? They said it was going to be for 1 year only.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
and now
right.
Almost 4 years later, they're still building them.
They're like those the bands that keep saying this is our they're Kiss. Yeah. They are the Kiss of bands of brands. It's like, hey, this is our last tour.
Well, I went to see the Who in 1981.
Oh, that was their last tour.
On their farewell tour.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about touring again in 2025. Yeah. So
they did another tour later on, because I remember they've
done multiple tours.
They've done multiple tours since then. I think they did a Tommy tour in the mid 80s.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Honda Prelude.
All Preludes are good Preludes. That's my big take.
I love them. I learned how to drive a stick shift on a Honda Prelude.
They're all wonderful cars.
Yep.
Well, the new Prelude is officially coming to North America next year. It was never, when they showed the concept last year, it was, maybe, possibly, we'll think about it. It's official now. It is coming here about a year from now. But unlike some of the previous rumors, no manual transmission.
Well,
and Honda makes such great manual transmission, but sure, it's because
it's a hybrid only.
A hybrid only. I know.
But it will have this Honda S Plus shift feature to enhance the driving experience. So,
which should make it fun. It makes me think of Hyundai's N Grin thing.
Yeah,
Grin.
Well, I mean, it's the same. It sounds like it's basically the same powertrain that's in the Civic Hybrid, which I enjoyed. It was good. It was good car. I liked it a lot.
I did too. So, yeah.
So hopefully that will be good when they launch it next year.
It could be very fun.
Yeah.
I have been spending the last 15 years trying to find a nice first generation Honda Prelude. And, they made about 800, 400, I don't know, some small number of first generation Preludes that are convertibles.
Did they really?
Yes. What? It was like this very weird thing. And I found one for sale and I biffed it because I was like, oh no, maybe I should get it. And then it was gone.
I don't even know that I've ever seen. Oh, there we go. I just Googled Honda Prelude convertible. There we go.
I don't even remember that.
I don't either. I just had to look.
It was like a really weird. It was just really weird. I don't know what they were like. It was some special edition. I love the first generation Prelude. But again, all Preludes are good.
Yeah,
all Preludes are good Preludes. Yep.
So so the Prelude's coming with Shift S Plus, whatever. S Plus Shift. We'll see what that actually is. But that's coming next year. All right, Nicole.
Yes, sir.
You while I was in Munich the other week,
yes,
you went to Nashville. You got to drive a couple of new Nissans.
I got to drive a couple new Nissans, two very different Nissans. I drove the new Armada and I drove the new Murano. And I just have to say, running both these at the same event, and they had us do Armada one day and Murano the next. And we went to the same place for breakfast and presentations, and they sent us into two different rooms. And it was so funny because the Armada side was so like, we are rough and ready and rugged, and we've got outdoor equipment. You go into the Murano side, it's like, hello, welcome to the spa. I'm like, whoa. It was they created entirely different vibes, which is what they
That's
intended.
Cool.
It was actually really cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're different vehicles. You want to get different customers.
And they were trying to they mentioned that they did it. And it's like, they're saying this is not the same person buying both these cars. Very clearly not. So which one do we want to talk about first, Armada or Murano?
Whichever you
Murano.
prefer.
Okay, Murano. Robbie said Murano. So
Are they bringing back a convertible?
That was not. They cannot comment on future product.
No cross cabriolet this time.
No cross cabriolet. So the Murano, it's the sort of the upscale, like Nissan, right? It's supposed to be a little fancier. It's supposed to be a little nice, a little bit elegant. So they made a ton of changes to this. The exterior is different. They have an upgraded interior. You have heated, ventilated, and massaging front seats. Dude, that's awesome. They've got ambient lighting. They also have a new powertrain. It's a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with a 9-speed automatic. So they got rid of the old V6, which had a CVT. This is much nicer. This is so way nicer. I was not a fan of the old CVT. Putting in an actual automatic transmission was lovely. They also made this a little bit bigger. It's a little bit wider than it was before, so it's a little bit roomier in there. If you wanted to put 3 people in the back seat, I think you could probably do it, although not for, extended lengths of time. This is still a crossover, small SUV. This isn't a big vehicle. They did some stuff in the back to tidy it up a little bit that looks really good. Like they kind of hid the rear wiper, so it's kind of like tucked in such a way.
It's up underneath the rear spoiler,
it's
right?
like
So
underneath the spoiler.
down, right?
So you don't see it. When it's up there, you don't see it until it comes down. You don't really see it, which is kind of nice. So it makes it a little cleaner looking. And they also, Murano is named after the Murano glass, which is near Venice, the glass, a little place that does the Murano glass. And they have a finish. It's not actual, but it's called Murano glass. And it's inspired to look like the Murano glass from Italy, which is really nice. They did a beautiful job on the interior of this car. It really is an attractive, comfortable, appealing car. And there's just soft touch surfaces everywhere. It's the idea to give you a little bit more premium thing, like where your elbows are on this side. There's no place where you're going to rest your hands or whatever that isn't nice and soft. Even over the infotainment / instrument cluster, it's like the hood that goes over that. It's a soft touch surface. So they made everything look a little bit more premium. It's like it's a 12.3 inch, two 12.3 inch screens, one right next to the other. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can get a 10-speaker Bose audio system. The thing that I wasn't real keen on is they didn't put the controls in the infotainment, but they still have, if you look below the vents, they have capacitive controls. They aren't buttons. They're a little sort of touch, and there's
kind of like the Aria.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no feedback. So it can be a little tricky sometimes for like, did I turn the heat up? Did I turn the heat up? Turning the heat up. Oh God, I've turned on an Inferno. It's a little hard. So it takes, that's not how hot I wanted it. So it takes a little bit, and sometimes you hit it and it feels like it works. I don't know if I drove it longer, if I get used to the right amount of pressure it requires. So I wouldn't feel like tap, 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 jab, jab. Oh no. So I had a little bit of trouble with those capacitive controls, but there is a volume knob. Woohoo. So at least they gave you a volume knob. They didn't take that away.
You know what else there is? There's tabs on the vents.
I say you can adjust the vents. So, it's a win. So you can adjust the vents. So that's good. I think it's nice. I really like the styling on this. I like how they did it. It is really a more premium feeling vehicle than it was before. I think it looks really slick from the outside. I like the curviness that they did. The pricing did go up a skosh this year. I don't have the old pricing in front of me, but there's 3 trims. The SV is $40,470. And that's the only trim that offers front wheel drive, but you can add on all wheel drive for $1,000. The SL is $46,560 and the top platinum is $49,600. So it's not inexpensive, like Scotia under 50 is a pretty premium price for a vehicle, but it does have a nice premium interior. I mean, I don't feel like it doesn't look like what they're trying to sell. I feel like it checks the boxes of what it's supposed to be. You guys want to guess a destination for kicks and giggles?
Ooh.
$14.95.
$12.95.
Wait, I think.
Oh no, it's math time.
It's $13.90. So Robbie, you're closer by right? Robbie's closer by $5. My brain's like, wait, that's really close.
Hey, finally.
I've run out of coffee. So so destination's $1,390. So I do think that I think this is a really important vehicle for Nissan because everyone's been talking about the news. There's a lot of news on Nissan. They're having struggles. They're supposedly not talking to Honda about doing things to try to keep them alive. So I think they need to have vehicles that are going to be well received. I think the Murano should be well received. I think it targets it's done right for the customer it's targeting. So I like the Murano overall. So I'm hoping it does well for them. I think it's a pretty important car for them. And I think it will do well. That's my guess.
It's a good design.
I think it's significantly better looking than it was before. But I'm so nervous for Nissan. Like in general, like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Next week? Like, it's tough. Like they have to, the thing is they can't just have a vehicle, I think at this point that does okay. They kind of have to knock it out of the park with everything. I don't know that they did that. I think this is a really strong offering. We'll have to see how the public feels about it. The Murano is a good car. I've always thought the Murano is a pretty solid vehicle for what it's supposed to be. I think the improvements they made stylistically are fabulous. I think the new powertrain is a big improvement as well. So I think it could do quite well for them, and we'll just have to see. I always wonder though, and I don't know how much the general public here's the scuttlebutt about things like Nissan being in trouble and running out of money and all these things. So would you still buy a Nissan if you knew that?
Well, they announced this week, that Nissan and Honda were in talks to merge.
Yes, they're, but like, what's going to happen with that? Like, you don't know what that means. You know what I mean? They're in talks to merge. Yeah. What will that mean for Honda? What will that mean for Nissan? What will that mean for the product lineup? We don't know. It could be really great, or it could be things you're like, that's not how we thought that would go,
It's tough because Honda way more than Honda needs Nissan. It's essentially like, hey, sure, we'll come help you out,
right?
Sort of situation. And but what does that mean for the Nissan lineup? Do you lose the Murano? Do you lose the Armada? Do you lose Infiniti? Does Infiniti just go away because you have Acura?
Infiniti is probably the most at risk.
Because I don't see the point of Infiniti at that point.
Yeah.
Well, and Infiniti,
even now, I think most people don't really see the point of Infiniti. But
and there was that thing, did we talk about this last time we talked? But there was something about like the way the dealerships that were like it's not Hyundai, Nissan, Infiniti dealerships, and they were two separate things. So say you were Bob's Automotive and you had a Nissan dealership and an Infiniti dealership, and they were allowing them to consolidate that in some cases because the Infiniti guys were losing so much money. They're like, if we can at least bring it into one, share some of the costs there, have the same financing department and just the things. There was talk about that. So Infiniti, they were already sort of diluting Infiniti before it, already. So I don't know what's going to happen with that.
I think, I've talked to a couple of people this week. I think one of some of the interesting things that could come out of a potential merger is, Nissan gets access to Honda's new EV platforms, which could be pretty promising.
Yeah.
Nissan has really fallen behind on the EVs. And on the other side, for Honda, I think what could be interesting for them is Nissan's body on frame platforms.
Yeah.
Because Honda has nothing like that. They have nothing in the large SUV or even, mid-size body on frame pickup truck. They've got the Ridgeline, the Nissan Frontier, is a pretty solid truck. And then, on the full size, premium SUV, the new Armada and the Infiniti QX80, are, well, you tell us, is the Armada any good?
It is.
Da-da-da. That's the next thing. Yeah.
It's the Armada. The other vehicle we drove at that same time was the Armada, and they had us do. We drove and I just forgot the Pro 4X. Sorry, blanked on the trim. Pro 4X, and we drove the Platinum Reserve, which are both new trims for the Armada. Two very different trims because the Pro 4X is their off-roady one, and the Platinum Reserve is their fancy one. And I talked to Brent Hagen. Brent. Oh my God, I just blanked on his name. Is it Brett or Brent? Anyway,
Mr. Hagen.
Mr. Hagen. Oh my gosh, why can I not remember your first name? I talked to him about the strategy here, and they had said, they were looking at, they wanted to make the off-road, like it's basically the Patrol sold other way. And it was kind of sort of the Patrol, the last generation. Now it, honest to goodness, is a Patrol in every way, except it doesn't say Patrol inside and on the badge. It says Armada. So now they've given it that capability. That was the focus with the Pro 4X, was to really give people a genuinely capable Armada with the same kind of capability that you have elsewhere. Whereas the Platinum Reserve, where this is like their halo vehicle, they wanted you to have that really luxury experience if you wanted it, which they both achieve. Like the Platinum Reserve in this thing it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful SUV, feels very premium. Like it's got these like killer wheels. The wheels were gorgeous. It's like a 22-inch wheel, I think. This thing looks good. It looks really good. And taking the Pro 4X, they gave us a little off-road course to drive. I mean, it was very brief. It was maybe 10 minutes to do the whole thing. So it wasn't like an extensive amount of off-roading, but they did have us do some stuff, where you check out the articulation. You're going very steep dirt, like hill that they built, like where you're looking at sky for a minute and you can't see the road in front of you. They had us, driving through stuff to prove that it can do what it says it can do. It wasn't a full day of off-roading, but it checked the boxes. So if you were really doing something, you could actually do it in this. They also did, oh my gosh, I have the worst trouble believing that engineers actually can make cameras. I can't trust the camera. Okay, I know they make way more complicated things. I apparently don't trust the camera guys. I get so anxious, even like using it just regular old every day, the backup camera. And I know you are supposed to double check, but I like quadruple check. I'm like, I don't know if that camera's right. I'm always looking over my shoulder, right? They did a thing where they had you drive through the giant round bales of hay they'd set up on this course. And at the very end, they had, I'm going to put air quotes for a bridge. They basically set up pieces of wood that were just on the grass to mimic as if you were going over a bridge. You had to line up, and they put this thing over your windshield so you could not see, like a little stuff. And then they made there's like a whole bunch of different camera views. You had to use your cameras. Dear God, it's the most stressful 4 minutes of driving I have done the entirety of 2024. Forget snowstorms and blizzards. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to use the cameras. So, I used the cameras, and it actually worked really well. Like I drove through little bales of hay, didn't take out a bale of hay, lined up perfectly on the, I don't know if they were bigger than 2x4s, but wide enough for your tire pieces, line it right up because you can see exactly in the camera, can line yourself up. You can do this. And that was to sort of demonstrate whether or not Nicole would have a heart attack doing that. And also to demonstrate that off-road, you have these camera views that really let you see everything. So, which is super helpful if you're in tight confines where you think like, is my tire really lined up there? Am I really going to clear that rock or that tree root or the outcropping? So I genuinely thought they did a great job with this Armada. It's comfortable. It has trims that fit for everybody. You want a luxury Armada? Go ahead and buy yourself the Platinum Reserve. You want a more premium version of the Armada, a more off-road version, then go ahead and get the Pro 4X. If you look at it, it starts at about 56,520 and goes up to 76,990. This is for the rear-wheel drive trims. So you're a pretty big price, 56 to 76. That's 20 grand, right? But you have a range of choices. And if you want a more base version of it, go for the base version. If you're looking for fancy or you're looking for, off-road, you can do that too. So I think they offer a good range of trims for people so that you can pick what you want. It is very roomy in terms of a family vehicle. It's really roomy in there. It's tons of room. They've changed how it looks on the outside, but it's still essentially very square. So you've got just this cavernous amount of room inside this. So for people, for cargo, it's a great option. So I think they did a good job with us. I was pleased. I think most people will be pleased. And also to know that they can get basically now the Patrol, the hardcore off-road people who wanted that and couldn't get it here, you can get it. He said the only difference is that the trim lineups are actually different and the way the features are out there. So you can get, it's not called Platinum Reserve and Pro 4. They have different naming conventions for things, and the trim walk's a little bit different, but essentially all the features, you can get them here. You can get them outside the US, which is a first. So yeah, so there's the Armada. I was happy with it.
So you've driven the QX80 as well, right?
I have not driven the new. Have I driven the new QX80? I don't remember if I've driven the new one. I don't think I did the launch for that, and I can't remember if I've gotten one in my driveway.
I drove it for about a half hour when they did the Murano reveal program. They had a bunch of vehicles there, and
I did not get to attend that. I missed that, unfortunately.
So I drove it for about a half hour. I was just curious, if you've driven both the Murano or the Armada Platinum Reserve and the QX80, is there any reason to step up to the QX80 from
not having driven the QX80? But I'm going to say, as good as this Platinum Reserve is, and it's fabulous, generally speaking, Infiniti is nicer inside. They do more. And I think they're very conscious when they were talking about the different trims and there was a point in the presentation where they talked about differentiating between the two. I still think that from what I understand, if you're really looking for that premium, you want that premium, Infiniti is probably going to be what you want. I think Armada comes really close with that Platinum Reserve, but I'm betting if you move up, your top Infiniti, your top Armada, you're probably going to think the Infiniti is a little bit snazzier. And it's Brent Hagen, Senior Manager Product Planning at Nissan, who I spoke to. Now that I've sorry, Brent, I don't know why I couldn't. I was just mangling your first name.
I'm just looking at the QX80 versus the Platinum Reserve Armada. the Armada Platinum Reserve starts at $82,000, and the QX80 starts at $84,445. So about $2,500 difference between the two. But that's the starting point for the QX80.
Right.
So from there, you're going to go up. You can get quite a bit more expensive.
I'm just looking. I just pulled up Infiniti's consumer site as we're sitting here, and I'm looking at the QX80 and just what I'm seeing of the difference. And looking at the inside, I think if you just did the same thing with the Armada, you'll see, I'm looking at the infotainment, the way the screens are set up, the way you have the long screen across top, and then it looks like you have a second screen for the climate controls. It's more a part of the center console, which gives it a little bit more of a premium vibe. I mean, they're both premium, but I think this is going to, and especially they have that autograph trim in Infiniti, and those autograph trims are gorgeous. So I can't imagine that wouldn't outdo the Armada, as beautiful as the Platinum Reserve is.
And the differences in the exterior design, the Platinum Reserve Armada, looks more chunky, it looks more like a traditional SUV, whereas the Infiniti definitely looks a little more upscale in its design.
I think Infiniti is going to be more refined. I think it's going to, if you, when you look at it, it's going to depend. Do you want that premium, what's your focus? If that super premium luxury car, if you want a real luxury car, you're going to want to step up to the Infiniti. I'm just looking at the images. It's definitely a more premium looking interior in the Infiniti. They've got the Klipsch audio system built right into the headrest as a thing in there. Those kinds of features you can't get on the Armada, but the Armada is way more affordable. So if you're not looking for luxury car pricing, but you still want a really nice premium experience, the Platinum Reserve is going to do that for you.
All right. Any final thoughts on the Murano or Armada?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. All right. Last news item I had was Hyundai Motor Group going to be switching over to Android Automotive for their infotainment at some point in the next couple of years. But before they do that, they are already, Kia at least, is already starting to integrate the Google Maps platform Places API to add 250 million points of interest into the current Hyundai Kia navigation system. And hopefully that will mean that if you're driving one of their EVs, it will be able to do a better job of actually finding chargers and guiding you to the closest charger along your route. Because that is that's one of the few flaws that I really have.
So I've been driving my Hyundai up and down the state a bunch recently, and I was using a better route planner. And on one of the trips back, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to use the Hyundai route planner, and it works surprisingly well, like really well.
They've improved it.
So, and it tells you how many people are at the charger, how many chargers are available when you get there. And I have Electrify America because I get that free charging. So you can filter it to say just Electrify America. The interface though is still weird. It's not great, but it works. And the last drive up to Tehachapi, which is like 350 miles away, and there's a mountain you got to go up and blah blah blah. It's my hometown. And it's the one weird thing is that when you're driving back from Southern California up to Northern California, it keeps wanting to put me on the 99 instead of the Interstate 5. I don't know why. It's like the weirdest decision. So I just go over to Interstate 5 anyway, and it just re-navigates.
Does 99 have a lower speed limit?
No, I don't know why it wants me to go on 99. And I turned on so it would accept HOV lanes. I was like, I don't know why it's doing this, and it's longer. It's like 30 to 40 minutes longer to take 99. So I don't know what that's all about. But when I'm driving, maybe. But I will say that it's. I've been driving up and down the state probably like 3 times now using the Hyundai route saying, and it tells me, oh, pull over here and go to this charging station, and it'll take you this long. Like you can charge up to this much and this amount of time.
Does it actually pull up charging stations that are ahead of you instead of those that are 50 miles behind you?
Yeah. It tells me all the charging stations along. It does all the better route. It's essentially doing what Tesla better route planning and the Google systems are doing. So it does work. On my Ioniq 5, it is. But it doesn't show you like. You have to push like you're like, how do I know how long what my charge rate will be when I get to this charging station? How long does it want me to be there? And what percentage does it want me to charge up to? And so you have to push it's counterintuitive, but I think you have to push the destination button, which is a little checkered flag, and it pops up and it shows you all the charging stations. It gives you the charging stations you got to stop at, what time you'll be there, how far away they are, what your charge rate should be when you get there. But it's like weirdly hidden for some reason.
Yeah.
And so it has all the tools. It's just like the UI is sort of weird. So you can do it. It does work. And yeah, I remember when it would be like, oh yeah, there's a charging station 50 miles behind you. I'm like, well, that's not helpful at all.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, so it does work, and I was pleasantly surprised a few months ago when I started using it, because I was like, let me just try this. I'm driving back. I have a better route planner in the background just in case. And it ended up working. I was like, well, this is something good.
Yeah, the current stuff is using POI databases from TomTom, but they're going to switch over to the Google POI database. So we'll see if that makes things better still.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, Google Maps has gotten just worse over the last 18 months. I'm just like, what is going on with Google? What are they doing? And I feel like every time something
they're focused on AI.
Everything something is broken is because they added AI to it. They're like, hey, here's the thing, and it works fine, it works great. And they're like, hey, we're gonna add AI, and then it's broken, and it doesn't do the thing it's supposed to do. I'm like, so I don't know if I'm happy or sad about this news because the TomTom system seems to be working and it's integrated with the charging networks, and I'm like, oh man, is this gonna mess things up? I've been using Apple Maps more and more because Google's sort of it's lost its luster, unfortunately.
Google Maps has been betraying me. I've had too many Google Maps issues. Like, you have arrived, and I'm like, that is not. I I'm by a tree on a road in the middle of nowhere. I did not try to get to a tree. Can you direct me to a driveway, an entrance, something? Like, it keeps not stopping me in the right spot. And I'm like, I've literally put in an address I know that exists. I'm like, I'm in someone's backyard. What has happened here?
It used to be bad outside of like northern, like in further, like up above like San Francisco.
Yeah.
Like once you get like 60, 80 miles out, it would be like super wonky.
Which
like,
one, Apple Maps or Google Maps?
Google Maps. Like, because my wife and I like to go up there to stay at, for little mini vacations, and we get places in the middle of nowhere, and it would be super wrong. And we're like, okay, and we're like, okay,
a little wrong,
fine.
super wrong.
Yeah, but it wasn't as wrong as like when Apple Maps first came out, and it directed us instead of our campsite, it directed us to the end of a runway for a local like airport, and we're like, oh, Apple Maps.
It took me, early Apple Maps took me, I was going to a beach and I was like, I'll see how it directs me. And it gave me a different, I'm like, I'll follow it. Took me to a logging road just to end it at a hole. And I'm like, what? Like, it's not even close. Yeah. It's not that bad anymore.
Yeah, no, so I've been using Apple Maps more. Google Maps is almost worthless in Japan.
Yeah.
It's just, I just stopped.
Same in Korea.
Yeah, it's just not good at all there. But yeah, no, it's just like, after being like sort of like rock solid and like helpful, and with a few little weird things once you got out of like metropolitan areas, it's just gotten really, really bad. And I'll look at the directions it's giving me. I'm like, what is it? It's at one point it wanted me to go the wrong direction for 20 miles and then turn around and go the right direction. I'm like, what is going on? If I didn't know any better, if I was just like, oh, this is how you have to go, I would just add 40 miles to my drive. So yeah, I don't know. It's just stop with the AI. All right. I know you're trying to get shareholder value out of this.
Shareholder value.
But you know what's good for shareholder value? Satisfied customers.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. But if you don't say the thing, they're like, well, you're falling behind. I'm like, no, they're not. If you're making a solid product, you're not falling behind.
All right.
Anyway, that's my whole thing.
All right. Let's answer a question from Andrew Pappas and to finish it off today. Andrew says, Dear WB guys and gal, I emailed you a couple years ago asking, when will the last normal manual transmission cars be available for sale? For us, we just pulled the trigger on a 2024 VW GTI. It's a daily for my wife and our family car, her, me, 70-pound dog, and our parents, friends, etc. Good for a road trip or two a year. We looked at the current list and it was decided that a hatch was still needed. That left us with the GR Corolla, Mazda 3, GTI, Integra A-Spec Type S, and the Civic Type R. The Type R and Type S were too expensive, and the Type R had too tight and too grippy seats. The Mazda is nice, but the back seat is very tight, especially in headroom. The A-Spec has more room, but headroom in the rear was still a bit tight. The recent discounts making a new GTI comparable with a lightly used, and the fact that 24 was the end of manual forced our hand. It was time, and the old Ford Focus will go to a friend's kid to get another follower of the third pedal. Now the meat of my question. How do I make this thing last as long as possible? I live in central Massachusetts, and the salt is a killer. Looking into PPF, that's paint protection film, ceramic coating for the finish. What about the oil undercoating? There's a company nearby that started to offer it. Obviously, keeping up with maintenance, I need to lay the groundwork now to keep it going on well until it's a dinosaur. Love the podcast and looking forward to your input.
I don't know. I live in California.
Okay, so here's my thing.
We don't salt the roads. If you have to drive in the snow up in the mountains, you just suck it up.
We salt the roads like nobody's business out here. Like we've had a couple little baby snowstorms and the roads are no longer like blacktop. It's gray from the salt already. And it's only December. My biggest thing, and I swear to God, I should just buy a car wash. I take my car through the car wash all the time in the winter and the undercarriage wash like constantly to knock off the salt. Like every time there's a snowstorm after the storm, I do it to knock everything off of there. I wash the car a lot. I don't do it so much in the summer because like I can survive bugs stuck on my, car, but the salt, man, it just eats your car. So definitely the car wash thing. And that sounds like such an easy tip, but that will go miles to keeping all that salt and the other stuff now that they spray. It's like the chemical spray that Sam probably knows what it is that they spray on the roads. That also is very hard on your car. I've heard. So yeah, just get that stuff off of there as often as you can. That's my biggest tip.
Yeah, at least once a week through a car wash, if not more. You can also go to the they have these basically do it yourself car washes where you pull into a bay and you get the hose there, and just make sure you spray the underside of the car.
That's the key.
You get that hose down really well, rinse off all the salt. That's really the only thing you can do. Depending on where you live, like when my daughter who lives in Colorado bought her Mazda 3 or Mazda CX-30 last year, she asked about PPF. And I suggested, normally I would not recommend that stuff, but in her case, I did, just because, there they use a lot of sand. And in a lot of places, they put a lot of sand down on the road. So it's not just the salt, but the sand, which obviously is not corrosive, but it's very abrasive. And so depending on what they're using in Massachusetts, if they're also putting sand, you might want to get at least the PPF on the front of the car, if not necessarily the whole body. But yeah, the oil undercoating, I mean, that's something that they've been doing that for decades. I don't know that that's necessarily very helpful.
A while ago now, I didn't do it, but I went to a place in New Hampshire that does oil undercoating and actually did a thing for Tim Esterdahl, pickup truck talk and SUV plus SUV, pickup truck talk plus SUV. I'm saying the name of his site wrong.
I think it's pickup truck plus SUV talk.
Thank you. So, yeah. And I did a thing because people talk about their pickup trucks and how they, you have them forever and they rot through. And I saw the guy it's like their business and they did the oil undercoating. And it's a process that he said, it once it's there for a while. You don't have to redo it a lot. And it seems like a pretty neat process. I don't know how much value. I mean, you'd have to see how expensive it is. I can't remember thinking it was not prohibitive. But theoretically, it does help. And once you've done it, it's not like, it's on there for a good while before you have to have any attention.
It should last for at least a few years.
Yeah, it's not like an annual thing. I forget, God, this is before COVID. So it's like 5 or 6 years ago that I went up to this. But yeah, so it's something you can do. And there are companies that do it. I don't know that I would go that far. I've always felt like as long as, like what Sam and I were saying, as long as you're taking that sucker to a car wash and getting that undercarriage wash, if you can't get it in the self-serve wash, it's worth the price of doing whatever the lowest one on the sign that includes undercarriage, the one that's the cheapest with that's what I go with. I don't go with like the fancy 18 colors of suds. Whatever's the one that gets me, like the second one down gets me undercarriage, that's the one I do.
And what you might want to consider is, I know a lot of car washes around here, offer, you can buy you can prepay for a bunch of car washes, and get a bit of a discount on that. Yeah. So buy coupons for 10 or 20 car washes and save a few bucks that way. But that's really the most effective thing you can do is just a good car wash that really rinses out the bottom.
The other piece to go along with that, because it's all about the salt here. I don't know what you caught for floor mats. Take out the carpeted ones, at least during the winter, and get some rubberized floor mats to put on there that can soak up the salt and the water and everything, because that, that if you live in New England, it just leaves a ring on your carpet, but it eats it like nobody's business. So if you have that,
it looks gross too.
It looks horrible. And you can take it and have your car detailed, and sometimes you can still see a little bit of a ring. It's like it's literally eaten the carpet. The carpet won't be the same. So if you want that floor to not look like garbage in 5 years, you don't even have to get fancy WeatherTech custom. Just go get some kind of rubberized floor mat that has a little bit of a like a
rim around the edge.
Yeah, it's like a rim around the edge. It's like like a quarter inch, a half inch or something. So the grains of salt stuck on your boots and the sand and the water that melts off all goes on there, and just keep it from getting on your carpet. That'll save you on the interior and keep that looking halfway decent for a lot longer.
Yeah, and just like when I'm out in the snow, just knock my feet against the rocker panel before I get in the car. Try and knock off as much of the snow and slush as I can.
Yeah.
Keep that to a minimum. But yeah, some good all weather floor mats with a rim around the edge definitely helps as well.
Yep.
All right, hope that helps, Andrew. Keep the email coming to feedback@wheelbearings.media, and don't forget you can get all kinds of Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. They've got t-shirts and hats and sweaters and sweatshirts and hoodies and mugs and stickers and stuff. So check those out, and we will talk to you all next time.
And Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye.
Yeah. Happy holidays, everybody.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.